Hello, everyone. Welcome to Harmonious Conversations, Melodic Dialogues with Musicians, Interview Part 2. Today we have the celebrity musician, Veena player, Carnatic music, vocalist. We have Ramana Balachandran. Ramana Balachandran, welcome to the show.
Hi everyone. I'm Ramana. I play the veena. I also play the mridangam. I'm a Carnatic musician living in India. So nice to see you all.
Yes. Nice to talk to you. So I guess first question, kind of a general question. Um, I've watched many of your performances, and I'm super amazed at the range of different things you can do, and also the techniques that you use. And we just wanted to ask, how have your kind of experiences in life, or emotions, or past, or spirituality even, um, influenced how you perform or how you compose? Like, how do you use that to make your performance unique?
Uh-huh. So I think the attitude at home has always been one of largely introspection because uh, performance was never done for the sake of it. It was always something incidental. So I used to I mean, the idea was to just work on my music, deepen myself, and if I get called somewhere, I go perform, and I do whatever I can to make that performance a success. So, but it's never that, oh, I got to make this much money, I got to perform here, or I got to play with this person, or anything of that sort. So it was always music being the one that takes the front seat, and everything else taking the back seat. That is, I think, kind of related to your question. So the other thing is, I have also changed internally as a person over the years, and that has definitely changed the way I look at music. I the way I play or sing. Also, for example, um, there was this turning point around maybe when I was 15ish. Um, so until then, I was performing for 2 3 years, and then I was getting called a lot and all that. But then it was still at some level quite mechanical. It was not something that came from the heart. And there was this day where I was playing a certain piece at home, and it was in fact Raga Sahana, and I just started to tear up at my own playing, and it was not narcissism, but it was just the power of music doing something profound to me, and it kind of moved me a lot, and that really changed the way I looked at music, and one of the main inflection points in my career. Then music became something uh, that is a medium to express rather than something to just represent. You know what I mean? So. And that's when I started to play around with uh, emoting in different ways. So you take a certain ragam or a certain scale, for instance, or a certain song, and you start to see, oh, doing, you know, these things emotes in these ways. And you start to get an insight into all that, and then it becomes very interesting. Um, yeah, and also. Um, I was so in India, especially in the South, we come from a tradition of, um, giving a lot of importance to the inner journey of ourselves, and that's where the spirituality comes in. And most of our spiritual literature is driven towards inner discovery, and part of that involves, devotion, bhakti, as they say. I wasn't a person personally that was, Uh, moved by this idea of bhakti or devotion, right? And a large part of the compositions in Carnatic music are based around bhakti, about the composer melting in front of the Lord, or some form of surrender or oneness and all that. I wouldn't, I was not the guy who, shed a tear for any of that. But then there was another inflection point where, just anything relating to surrender or oneness would just make me cry for no reason while playing, right? So that kind of changed the way I looked at compositions, and I think that has substantially changed the way I resonate with the listener. So yeah, these are some examples of how that inner journey has influenced my music.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. I think I've kind of had like a similar experience when I
Uh-huh.
joined an orchestra, because for the
Yeah.
longest time I was just learning violin
Uh-huh.
solo, by myself, and I didn't really learn to appreciate kind of the um, emotion or
Yeah.
ideas created by the music. But then joining orchestra, talking with all these other people and kind of being part of it instead of like just being the main driver of it, definitely made me learn to appreciate, you know,
Yeah.
creating a message for the audience. So that's really cool
It's
to hear.
always very beautiful when music takes the front seat and the artist takes the back seat. And if something's too demonstrative, or when the focus is fully on the artist, the music invariably doesn't resonate as much as it does when music is the main, you know, focus, right? That's kind of an interesting, and this, feeling these emotions and all, those are things that just, I don't think they can be developed. It has to just happen at some point, I feel. Or that's my understanding now. But yeah, anyway.
I think good that you elaborated on that. And I was just like talking to Vano and also like everyone in general, like my mom and dad, and like what role does this expression play in your like style and performance like nowadays? Like now you're performing almost every day or every week. Like how does that expression like influence how you perform? Like does it change every day or
Um, well, some of these things that I shared might help me to free myself of the audience, uh, to some level. What I mean by that is, um, being free of the audience or being free of compulsions on stage, or not being overawed in some sense. If a big musician comes and sits in the audience, and if I am all tensed up there, and oh, I gotta impress this guy, and that will start influencing music, and that's not something I want. That means that I'm bound, I'm not free. So these things, I think, has helped me free myself to some extent, if not fully. And the goal is to free myself fully, and just be one with music and forget about everything else. So yeah. And it's, I guess, brought in, uh excuse me, a sense of repose, or a certain contentment in the music that the audience feels when they listen to me. So rather than just going content after content after content, there are moments where you just absorb the content and say, it's almost like saying, hey, um, here's something that is so wonderful, and here's me sharing it with you all, rather than saying, hey, look at what I'm doing. So
So, as I think many of your fans know, and many of the people who met you know, you're an incredible devotee of Bhagavan, and as we all are. And one of the profound things that I came across was when I read your interview when you were like 13 or 14, where you spoke about how anytime when you were performing, you felt, slightly arrogant. You felt slightly, oh, I'm doing this. You just go back to Tiruvannamalai or Arunachala and you just be there and then everything disappears. So how was that sort of cultural upbringing, like being close to Bhagavan at such a young age and being in Arunachala for like such a young age? How has that really affected your musical journey and your musical career?
mhm. So it's kind of related to what I shared, but um, see, here in Tiruvannamalai, everyone's a zero, and no one gives a damn about how big a figure you are outside, and that is a very healthy environment, I feel, for anyone to be in, and especially musicians and artists in general, where there's a lot of subjectivity and irrational love, irrational hate, all that. It is all the more important for us to have, uh, an environment which just treats you like a very normal human being. And I personally have always had the fortune of enjoying the presence of Bhagavan since a kid. And anytime I felt some kind of conflict inside, or yeah, and I've just gone to the Samadhi shrine and felt completely healed, and I just don't know how that happens, and I think of it as a blessing. And it's more like, see, he's the strongest anchor in my life. I wouldn't call myself a sincere devotee at all, because I haven't even read his works fully and understood them, and I'm still learning. But it's more like, um, I've I've felt many times that everything is his grace and his happening through his will. And though it might all sound very rhetorical, or even stupid to some people, but that's what I've always felt. And the other thing is, uh, being in Tiruvannamalai and being exposed to Bhagavan and having such good, I really have to mention my parents, for all the guidance and nurturing that they have done. The music was always just one aspect of life, was one small aspect of life. There's something vastly beyond music. There's something vastly beyond performance. There's something vastly beyond just success in the usual terms. So the belief, or rather faith, is that, um, even if I don't make it in music, or even if I'm, not making much money, and all, the usual boxes are not checked, there is something beyond to look forward to and hold on to. That was the faith that I think I like to have. Um, yeah,
It reminds me of a time, right? So like 1 or 2 years back, before I found Bhagavan in my life, my parents were going to the Ramana
yeah,
satsang and all those types of things, right? But I was struggling really with music, right? I do Carnatic, I do Pata, I do Carnatic music. I was struggling really. I moved to a new teacher. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what I was gonna do. I was just basically hopeless, right? Because I come from a standpoint where a lot of the teachers, I was in a very judgmental environment, and I didn't have a support system like Bhagavan for me that would help me in my music. And fast forward like 2 years, and now I'm in a position where people respect me and my teacher gives me a genuine like place to be. And so I think at the end of the day, really all of this is I know it's like a musical podcast, but at the end of the day, it's really Bhagwan's grace, right? That anytime I've done a certain concert or performance, like not concert, I shouldn't say concert, like a small performance, I feel a little bit of a bit of an ego almost, right? I always remind myself that this is not me, it's always Bhagawan who's
yeah,
doing this, and and it brings so much it makes you feel very humble at the end of the day. So,
absolutely. See, I think the other thing is, this is kind of a digression, but I think it's worth mentioning, is that, spirituality is never an isolated pursuit in life, isn't it? So it is always melded with, our relationships, the way we live our daily lives. And if, for instance, I'm just saying, giving an example, um, there's a musician that is coming up. Let's say he plays Veena, and let's say at some point he does things that I'm not able to do, right? And
yeah,
say he's 15 years younger to me. If I feel threatened and insecure, I'm a failure, right? And if I'm able to heartfully appreciate that guy and say, "Oh, here, kid, you're doing these things much better than me, and I'm so happy for you." If I'm able to feel that, I feel that's Bhagwan's grace in action. Because um, otherwise, yeah, I don't see that as success in any way. I
yeah,
might be the most famous guy, but if I'm not able to appreciate another guy heartfully, that's a big
yeah.
failure.
It's it's something else when you have the ability to step down from a higher position, knowing that you've done a job really, really well, and people come to you, and then suddenly there's like not even a competition, but there's somebody else who knows how to do it in an effective way. you s- it'll at first it'll hurt, right? That's how
Yeah,
it usually is. You'll
exactly.
feel
Yeah,
like somebody else if somebody else can do this job better than me, right? You want to compete with them, but then over the years I found that rather than competing with these types of people, always working with them and being under them, it does
yeah,
incredible things to you. You
absolutely.
change completely. So
Yeah.
yeah. Max, next up to you, boy.
Yeah, so I guess kind of related to what we were talking about. Um, do you think these experiences that we've been talking about, and how you perform, has helped you manage I guess, the inherent pressure that comes with kind of the physical world of doing performances in all these places all the time. So has that helped?
In handling pressure and fame and all that.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah, that kind of thing.
Okay. I think I never have felt pressure beyond just getting some things right in a particular concert. I've never had the pressure of, oh, it's more like, acknowledging a certain responsibility and just being aware of what I have to do for that or being in that position. So let's say I'm for instance, the first few years that I was invited in senior slots in the organizations that I played in, this was many years ago. Oh, that's when you realize, oh, okay, I'm going to the next level, and which means that I gotta work on these things. And if I don't work on these things, it's gonna be, a shameful thing. And then I have to equip myself and be competent enough to deserve that space. And there is pressure sometimes when you have to, you know, if I am doing um, I mean, I am nervous before every concert. I'm never like, fully, chilling and all that. So I do have some nervousness, but it's very handleable nervousness. It's always about, oh, I got to get this right somehow. And I'll just keep ensuring, okay, if I mess up here, I'll have this backup, all that. And because I'm a person that likes to keep a lot of things spontaneous on stage. I'm not the guy who curates, my performances start to end. So you have a little more pressure when you have to do stuff like that, and it's just that tension of wanting to get those challenging stuff right, but never a pressure that is beyond just the span of one concert. So yeah,
Yeah, it's really cool. And I feel like I guess with performing in general, yeah, a lot of the work and pressure comes before, like, you're
yeah,
trying to get the techniques right, the emotions the
yeah,
correct way made. And then at the concert, of course, it's good to have, I think, a healthy amount of like pressure just to make
yeah,
sure you stay on top of things and do
correct,
the best that you can do, with all your practice. But then, you know, I think also, yeah, keeping a bit of spontaneity adds
yeah,
variety and freshness to what you're doing. So,
yeah. And I think I always think of me myself as wanting to get to a stage where performance is almost like an extension of your practice, more from the sense of having that same sense of ease and uh, abandon, and just keeping it simple, because um, there is a lot of unnecessary imagination that might happen in a concert or before a concert that might come in the way of you being at ease. So that sense, it'll be interesting to get to a stage where it's just like an extension of my practice, and just that there are like maybe 1,000 more people seeing me practice. That's it. So
Yes,
uh,
I agree with that point because I remember, like, if I may add, like, I remember someone told me an advice for every single music competition. Treat your performance like a practice. Ultimately,
yeah,
get to that stage and you will feel more confident. I remember someone told me, and I actually performed much better because I thought it's no one's there, just pretend no one's there. You're just in
yeah,
that zone, and I think that
yeah,
really helps. And they know you want
that
to
do.
take it away from there.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, right? Performance is nothing more after you put away all the money and the fame and everything. It's no more than you just sharing your passion and your love and
Yeah,
your joy of music for
absolutely.
others to enjoy. It's the industry itself. I personally tell everyone who about who like works in the music industry, right? If you ever look at the music industry nowadays, right, it's always about the money and the fame. But when you really take it apart, right, you really just put money, fame, the need to have money, the need to check all those boxes. Really, you're just left with a bunch of people who are just passionate about showing the energy and the love that they get from music to the
Yeah,
entire world, which is,
yeah.
I believe, is a true blessing if you get to that in life.
I feel one guy that does that beautifully, or I believe he does that beautifully, is Jacob Collier.
Oh
Uh,
yes.
that
I
guy
lo-
is something. He's
yeah. So you're touring a lot, obviously. You're touring, you're doing concerts, you're doing classes. So in the midst of all of this, do you have any like hobbies? Do you have any other things in your personal life
Yeah.
that you care to
Um,
elaborate on
yeah,
some of
yeah,
the
sure. I mean, I used to have tons of hobbies at some point. I used to do origami, I used to do card magic, and I used to design my own paper airplanes. Paper airplanes was a big obsession for like 3 years,
wow, that's
and then
interesting.
I sometimes wind down by animating. So I just do some hand-drawn animations.
Really
Um,
interesting.
Anything nature, I'm up for it. So I used to go almost for like 3 to 4 hours to the forest to herp, as they say. So to look for snakes. I handle
Wow.
snakes. I don't handle venomous snakes yet, but um, yeah. So in fact, there's one time where um, I was at home, and then one of our friends who lives maybe a mile from our house suddenly called me up and said like, "Hey, Ramana, there's a snake in the bathroom." So, and I was like,
You
"Yeah,
you never know when you never
yeah,
know.
yeah." And then so stuff like that. And then what else? I play badminton, and then I also watch stuff on YouTube. I like watching comedy and anything wildlife. Uh, what else?
You want to sit
Mm.
violin?
Oh yeah, I do.
You
Yeah,
have to sneak that in there, don't you?
I know.
Yeah. But I
Uh,
think it's very important, right? When you have in a world like this busy, right? If you
yeah,
don't have something, especially nature, that's something that
yeah,
I'm very, very happy because a lot of days now you're just absorbed into electronics, screens. It's
yeah,
very, very hard to be in a world where you don't, where you're not with the screen, right? Everyone either
yeah,
has their phone or their laptop. And so being able to just go out and appreciate the smaller things,
yeah.
it it really makes a huge difference. I'm so glad. And now I know who to contact if I find a snake in my home, you know? You know, next time I just know who to ring up. So it's a pleasure. So, Max, you want to take it away?
I think it's my question. So
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
but Ramana, like quick segue. Like most of our audience here is like young musicians and also their parents and in general like musicians here. And like, do you have any general like few like 2 or 3 tips in general for young musicians who want to
Uh-huh.
improve and then become professional musicians, and then or they're trying to improve their communities through the power of music, because that's what With Connections is all about.
Yeah. Um, I guess two things pop up right out the bat in my mind. One is to have um, you know, great stuff they don't happen for people who do uh let me put it this way. Michael Phelps, right? He was saying that for almost a year he would swim daily and for several hours together at like in at dawn and stuff. And he would say that um, great things don't happen if you just do this stuff when you want to do it. You have to be able to do it when you don't want to do it. So many people kind of romanticize music and musicians and say, oh, this is like they're like a river flowing, they're so unpredictable, and it depends on their mood and all that. But you have to practice when you don't feel like practicing, and that's when you're going to be able to improve. And I would say one of the things that I regret not doing is, as a kid, I didn't have like a very set regimen for practice. I used to practice a lot, but it was all, concert driven. It was never like, a daily routine. So I would suggest that young musicians have at least like 1 or 2 hours of stuff that they do very, very regularly. Um, I would say daily. Of course, excluding rest days and all that. That is one. And then um, improvement, I think, happens best when you go very incrementally and list down goals that are very low hanging fruits. You don't say that, oh, I'm going to play this piece in 200 BPM in 1 year. Rather than saying that, you might want, you might as well say something like, okay, I'm going to play this part of that piece in 150 maybe next week. and okay, what should I do for that today? And sometimes I feel that, I mean, I've not followed this many times, but sometimes just jumping right into the activity that you want to do instead of waiting for that ideal time and ideal space. I've done that mistake many times. When I was doing college and when I was doing school, I would say, oh, I'm going to get that day where I have enough free time to practice, and that day would just never come. You just have to do it right now, even if it means to just practice for 20 minutes. So yeah, I think that's
Yes, I totally agree with that. At least in my piano practice, like my teacher always says you can't get up to like 100 BPM from 150 BPM in like 1 week. She says you
yeah,
have to get up gradually. So like she will say
yeah,
54, and if you can't do it, reach at least 80. If you can't reach
yeah.
100, so I think that really motivates us like to practice. And also like I know you're a multi instrumentalist, mridangam, veena, vocalist and all. What was it like in general to learn all these instruments? And does one instrument influence you how to play another? And
Okay, before that, one thing, um, adding on that point before, adding on the point before, right? There's like a saying that my part teacher says. He's like, you can't sing any alapana till you do your jante verses 1,000 times. Because
Yeah.
jante verse பண்ணலைன்னா alapana வராதுன்னு
Yeah.
the my music teacher will say. And what that means
Yeah.
is jante verse is essentially like second speed, right? Unless you
Yeah.
do that like 1,000 times, right? You're
Yeah.
never gonna get that alapana, right? You're never
Oh,
ever gonna get.
absolutely. See, the old saying that goes, when you do something 1,000 times, you might get it once on stage. That's true. I mean, I used to think
Yeah,
it's an exaggeration. Oh, it's a rhetorical statement. No, it's actually true.
it is really true.
Yeah.
No, it is. So yeah, okay, you're good to go.
oh yes, so like and like just to where Vano cut off, but like basically what I said is, what have you learned from this multi instrumentality? Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, because I learned a melodic instrument and a percussion instrument, it's a very interesting combo because um, I can think of many ways by which the mridangam learning has influenced my veena. You know, um, be it being able to respond to the mridangist on stage better, co-creating stuff with the mridangist better because I understand what he's doing and I can choose to go in different directions, um, which might suit what he's playing at that particular moment. And just overall, the overall ease with which I can address some mathematical aspects of melody, be it in Carnatic music, for instance, doing swarams, doing ragam tanam pallavis, trikalams, and all that. So that has definitely been easier to do after learning mridangam. It's not that you can't do without learning mridangam, but it's definitely easier. And I feel just um, it's kind of fortunate that I got to learn to do three things at a decent level. I can sing, decently well, play mridangam quite well, and uh, play veena uh, really well. So,
If
but that
that's
just
the
allowed
case, then
me
I
to.
don't know where we all stand. If that's the case, I don't know where we all stand.
No, no, I'm being honest here. So I think that has definitely allowed me to enjoy music better because I have that much that many more ways to look at a single piece of music, and I can look at the percussion aspect in these many ways, the melody aspect in these ways. So whenever I listen to any other genre, I have these three exposures to allow me to interpret that music. So that is interesting.
Sorry, so I'm sorry, get me, but so so now that you kind of like a lot of the audience that we're catering to are kids who are in orchestra. They're either part of chamber concerts or they're part of orchestra. Not not that I'm aware, but not a lot of them are kind of performers who perform solo. So my next question would be, right, when you're a musician, right, when you think about it, right, you're around a lot of different musicians, right? That's how the creative process happens. You have to be around a lot of musicians, right? So how do how does it work for you, right? So when you're around musicians, right, like-minded musicians, do you get your ideas better when you're around musicians or when you're alone? So how does that work for you?
Um, See, I think the main thing that happens when you're with like-minded musicians is that one, you get to kind of compare yourself in a healthy way and kind of really see where you stand musically. That's one thing that happens. The other thing is, um, it's just that one extra critique who is very diligent is always good. So that is another aspect that happens, and then you get a new look at you might get new perspectives that you have ignored about your own music. um, with respect to ideas, definitely, I mean, um, I might be straitjacketed to one kind of ideation, and that can be stretched when I'm with someone else. But I'm not sure if I can say one gives me more ideas or not. It just depends. I think there's an equal contribution by being in solitude and working on your ideas, and with being with someone. I think the because when you collaborate, you are a little more selfless, and that attitude will bring in some interesting ideas, I feel. And you worry more about the overall effect and not about just your stuff. So that is a different paradigm. So that is interesting.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. When I've had the opportunity to work with like one or two local kids in my group,
Yeah.
and for different projects really, it and every time I work with them, it's like what you said, right? You become more selfless because now somebody else might have a really great idea, right? And they might not be playing the role that you're playing, right? You might have a specific role to do in something, and they might give you a really great idea, and then you do the idea. At first, you'll be like you refuse to do the idea, right? But then
Yeah.
once you become selfless and you do the idea, then you learn, oh, it can be done
Yeah.
this way as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and in terms of doing things on your own, I think this has to be asked for anyone who has not seen Ramana Balachandran's concerts, which are absolutely amazing. He always does this thing with his RTP where he will sing a phrase and then he'll play variations of the phrase on the Veena. So how do you balance your vocal and your Veena aspect in a concert? I'm very curious to learn about that.
Mhm. Uh, so it started off as a way to just show the audience what happens lyrically in a song. So because it's just that they have an additional anchor to, you know, enjoy the music. Uh, and because largely our music is Sahitya based, lyric based. Um, and then it became something like an extra way to emote. So if there's a very poignant spot melodically in the song, I would just want to sing it and show the audience that, oh, this is so beautiful. Sometimes I might feel there might be some energetic sections or just different types of energies that I might feel that vocal might convey better than Veena. So that's sometimes I like to sing in those parts. Otherwise, I just like to just burst into song whenever I feel like, and I give myself that leeway. And I've been criticized a lot for doing, for singing in my concerts, but I don't care beyond a point. So
I know, but it's very, very interesting, right? Because a lot of the time when you listen to vocal concerts, you listen to Veena concerts, usually you just listen to when Veena concerts especially, right? When you don't get an idea of how the song flows lyrically, you kind of feel like, at least when I listen, I kind of feel a little bit lost. I just don't know, okay, where are we in the song?
yeah,
But then when you listen to the lyrics, then you kind of gain an idea of,
yeah,
oh, this is where I am in the song. So going connecting to that, right? Your RTPs are something that I have to speak about. They're absolutely amazing.
thank
Um,
you.
so so first of all, I like your definition of RTP, and also how do you go about? I know RTP is largely a very improvisational, but how do you go about doing an RTP with a Veena slash voice combo? How do you go about doing that?
So having the Veena vocal combo helps me, particularly in the Trikalam,
Yeah.
because there's no way I can show the audience what happens rhythmically if I don't have a way to show the rhythm, right? So the
Yeah.
only way I can do it is to sing it. So
Yeah.
I show those rhythmic complications. I put down the veena and sing it and then explain and show. And that I think resonates with a lot of people because most of the audience members will not have a clue about what's happening in the Trikalam generally in concerts, even
Yeah.
even if it is vocal concerts, because um, that's why I like to explain to some extent in brief about what happens mathematically, and I want the audience to have a very audible reference of the meter. So that's why I have to sing and show, because when I play, I don't have any way of showing an audible reference for them. So that I think particularly helps in Trikalam. And to accentuate, see, when you do a Ragamalika in the RTP and you want to do like an interesting way to arrive at the lyric, um, in a very hidden way, for
Yeah.
instance, or a very subtle way, the Veena might not be able to accentuate and make the audience realize that it's happening. So there I'll sing and accentuate it and see, this is what I'm doing. So,
That's it actually makes sense, right?
mm,
Because otherwise, if the audience, especially for Ragamalika, right? If you
mm,
want to show them something, right? It can be difficult sometimes. I'm not played Veena, so I don't know, but I can definitely understand what you're saying, right? If you want the audience to understand, you have to kind of position yourself in a place where, oh, I can show the audience and they
yeah.
understand. So, so something I kind of wanted to touch upon is um some of the people here in Rhythm Connections listen or work with jazz, right? So how would you compare, right? Like even an alapana, right? How would you compare an alapana to say a jazz improvisation? Like what differences and
I
similarities do you see?
I
Anything?
think I think I should be honest and say I don't know, because I haven't listened to enough jazz to be able to compare it constructively, because I've listened to bits and pieces, and jazz is one genre that I haven't listened extensively. So I'm not sure. So I've heard that it's quite similar to, or rather closer to Carnatic in some sense, but that's it. I don't know.
Yeah. I, um so at the end of at the end of the day, right? Music is like something one of my favorite one of my like sort of like heroes or somebody is inspired by. We always say like music is like a conduit of emotion. Right? Music
Mm,
allows you like as either whether you're a producer or whether you're a artist or singer songwriter, right? There's this person known as Warren Felder. He's a record producer in Atlanta, and I just read about him a lot. He's a really inspiring person for me. And he does a lot of R&B, jazz type music. And he always says music is a conduit of emotion because he always says the the emotion that you put when you make music or the emotion you put when you live perform really it translates. That's why whenever people listen to a beautiful song or a very beautiful live performance, sometimes they'll show those emotions. If it's really if you have there's a lot of energy in the room and you're like really hyping people up, people will feel that energy because you're sort of expressing that emotion. So
yeah.
how do you express your emotions at the end of the day in your concerts?
Yeah, I think I found it particularly challenging to generate impact with Veena, because it's taken a long time to figure that out to some extent. And I wouldn't say I've figured that out at all, because I still have many moments where I feel I'm not engaging with the audience enough, and I'm not being able to resonate with them. And but generally, one thumb rule I use is, if I'm able to move myself on stage, um, I'm happy with that, because I'm quite confident that just that will resonate with people, even if the music is something that they don't relate to. Just the fact that I'm moved and intense on stage will make a difference in their perception of music. Um, so I mostly focus on just moving myself and making sure that I'm absolutely present, intense, and very alive on stage, not bound by any kind of thought pattern or assumption or anything. So yeah.
And oh, should I? Okay. But I think your point really stands, right? When, like, even if people aren't able to understand what we say, I think that comes back to your point about bhakti, right?
Mm.
Even though a lot, like, even, I'm not the most spiritual guy. Like, you can walk up straight to me and I won't be like the kind of guy that just like says, okay, I'm gonna go do all these like prayers and stuff, right? But at the end of the day, when I'm singing at like a temple or if I'm doing a performance, even if I make a mistake, the first thing that a lot of people have told me is that it, um I'll say this in Tamil, but I'll translate it. Bhakti inda எல்லாத்தையும் சரியா வேணும்னு they say, which
Yeah.
means if there's devotion in what you're singing, if there's emotion and there's devotion in what you're singing, right?
Yeah.
Nobody will really care. Nobody will, like, even if you mess up that one niraval or if you mess up that one alapna, nobody will remember that because all they feel is they can feel that energy. They can feel the
That's true. That's true.
devotion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's I think it's an important point that I think a lot of the young musicians should remember. Right? Don't ever do music technically. Do it
Mm.
in a sense where you're always doing motion. And lastly, a few inspiring words to like the next generation of musicians, being an
uh,
inspiring person
is,
yourself.
so what should I say? I think uh, to ensure that none of the younger generation makes the mistakes that I made, I would say a few things like mean what you say. These are all very mundane statements, but they have a lot of power. And yeah, I think that's kind of the core of it. Coming to think of it, um, I think it's very important not to lie to ourselves because I've done that many times and I've worked on it. Um, it's not enough if you are truthful, but you have to be completely truthful to yourself. And just these simple axioms, I think, will take us quite a long way. And um, always know that you're standing on hundreds and thousands of people's shoulders, and you can't really take credit for something that you do. And I think that is something that will keep us humble throughout. So this is what comes to my mind now. So
Thank you so much, Ramanana, for everything.
pleasure.
Like,
Yeah. I
this
hope you
was
guys had fun and yeah.